As Jenny said, my name is Jörg Glückmann. I'm Director Cloud Business Solutions at Software AG. It's a very great pleasure for me today to introduce the main speaker of today's webcast, which is Jim Sinur. Jim is an independent thought leader in business process management and intelligent business operations. And I guess most of you know him as a former Gartner VP, running the business process analysis magic quadrant, besides others. Today, his research is focusing on business process innovation, business modeling, business process management technologies such as BPA-aaS and BPA, process collaboration, process intelligence, and business rule management. Jim also is one of the authors of BPM, The Next Wave. Please be aware that after the webcast, you will get Jim's latest thought leadership paper called Business Process Analysis as a Service, Process Thinking at a New Level. With that, I'm happy to hand over to Jim.
Thank you, Jörg. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all the folks on the line today. What I'd like to talk about is, how can you use BPA as a service in a new way that will help, and this is particularly important as process has proven that it gets lots of benefits. And so the scope of processes is expanding. So it is now going cross-department. It is now going across value chains, across supply chains, across geographical boundaries, and probably the most important, across goal boundaries, because each unit tends to have their own goals, and a process has to go across, two different, units at least that have different goal kinds of profiles. So on this first slide is my contact information if you want to read more deeply about what's going on in the process world from my perspective. With a number of case studies, you could check my blog. If you want to send me an email, my email address is there for you. So I love interacting with people, so that's, how we exchange information. So, I'm all about improving business operations, and that includes front office, back office, and the management office. But today we're going to limit our discussion mostly around operations, because we are now in a mode where we're trying to make our operations not only more efficient, but gain more revenue. McKinsey has written some recent reports talking about 45% of the IT departments are now a revenue center. So making money off our operations, both business operations and IT operations, is important. And so that means we have to do improvements. And in some cases, we don't know what the process is, so we have to discover it. And after we've lived with, tweaking the process time after time, then we may basically come up with innovation. So the principle here is you really can't manage what you can't see. So there's a couple of ways of describing it. What I find is describing process in the cloud, collaborating with people across time zones, across geographies, across departments, is really an excellent starting point. And, as we get deeper into the presentation, I'm going to give you some insights as to why, if it's not obvious to you already. We think, and I think, that focusing on immediate savings generates the capital for further efforts. Now, this is a uniquely American viewpoint. America is always looking for, let's get profits now, revenue now, and then if you do a good job, you get funding for the future. Europe's a little bit different. They start off with strategies and then fill it in. But what I do find is if you focus on current operations, no matter where you're starting, if you're starting from short-term hit or you're starting from long-term architecture and strategy, this is a way to get capital funding, and that's always an issue no matter where you are in the world. So I think it's very important to start there. Now, quite often, people don't even know what their processes are. They know what their job is, maybe. They may even know how to do their job excellent, and that may be maybe 30% of the people know how to do it excellent. 70% have been doing the way they've been taught. So a lot of the processes are really dark. You know, they're a set of actions, particularly end-to-end and across departmental lines, that aren't visible to the owners, managers of the overall process. And so trying to come up with mass adoption, change management, you know, improvement, or even getting rid of a process isn't going to happen if you don't know what it is. So being blind really has its challenges. You know, there are opportunities for savings, and I'm saying start with that because that proves it to the financial folks. But there are other issues. There's risk, there's compliance, there's the notion of better practices that evolve. Certainly you can put in a best practice package and use it for some core pieces, but once you start getting into competitive differentiation and you start getting into end-to-end kinds of processes, you're probably going to not have a best practice, but you're going to have an evolving, emerging set of better practices. Also, there's an emphasis on moving up the chain from just doing transactional capabilities to doing knowledge-based activities, whether that's case-based or whether it's collaboration or whether it's working with you know, the collective, which is, you know, people outside the organization that may not even have a relationship with you. So the notion of being able to link to that, optimize your resources. I mean, there's whole organizations that just work on optimizing employee actions. All of these can be gotten at by making your processes visible. So there's a lot of potential for taking those blinders off and really seeing where you are. And, you know, there's two basic ways of doing it. One is if you have something in operation and it's all automated, maybe you could put probes in everywhere, but that would be expensive. The other is to quickly and efficiently model it in the cloud. And the problem with modeling in the past is it took too long to get it going. By putting it as a service in the cloud, now you've got something going for you. And we are in a model-driven world. And model-driven is necessary as the connective tissue in a complex and dynamic world. So I liken it onto the airplane. You know, you have your customers, you have your business units, you have IT. They're all sitting in the plane. You have your applications that are giving your airplane some thrust, and you have data coming into those applications. You have business value coming out. But what steers the plane? It's the business processes. It's the policies. It's the rules. The business processes give you lift. And if you do a really good job on it, you're efficient, you can save fuel. You can get to your destination safer. And most business process models have rules embedded and policies and constraints embedded in them. So those green highlighted areas are absolutely crucial going forward. And of course, you have to have a strategy of, I'm, you know, flying in this kind of weather. I want to go from this country to that country. I want to make sure I don't fly over, you know, parts of the world that I'm going to get shot down in, which we saw recently. And all of this is controlled by the strategy. So processes right now are quite dynamic, and the ability to put in those strategy leverage points, whether it's scenarios for taking advantage or threats, having those identified ahead of time is important. So, you know, there are changing contexts, changing goals. If you run into some bad clouds, you're going to shift you know, where you're going to fly that airplane. And so instrumenting is important. So why should we bother to model processes and their guiding goals, policies, and rules? Well, you got to figure out where you are right now. I mean, you think you understand the process, but my guess is if you've ever been into a process session, you'll find, whether it's on the cloud or whether it's in a room, you're going to find out that you really don't know the process because somebody else has a certain amount of native knowledge that you don't. And you can figure out where you need to be. It's a great way of communicating. When I worked at American Express, we came up with our models and we took them worldwide, and we found out that our solution was not going to work in individual markets. It's a great way to build consensus by having a model. You put it in the cloud and they can be involved with building that model with you, and now they're now the ham in the breakfast instead of the eggs. So it's the pig versus the chicken when you start building consensus in the cloud. So you find opportunities, you improve quality, you understand your costs, you figure out what your risk is. There's a list, a major list of things that come out of modeling. Now the problem with modeling before is it was really easy to get into analysis paralysis. And you'd have sessions set at certain times to discuss things, and you'd have to have all the parties. Well, when you're in the cloud, you don't have to do that. You really can learn as you go. Well, why is this important? Well, processes have incredible reach, speed, and impact. But we think you need to start off with the workforce and what they're doing to understand them. And the workforce has the implicit knowledge of those processes. Obviously, your processes have to detect signals, so you better work on what kinds of signals you want to look for. And there's certain kinds of decisions and constraints that keep you from moving far afield. And of course, processes take action on those decisions and signals. But starting with the human resources, whether you're discovering processes through, instrumenting a live process, or whether you're modeling a process in the cloud, it's best to start out with the people because they really know what's going on. And guess what? At the end, those are going to be the people that are involved with the change. If you involve them early and you communicate regularly, you have a better chance of not getting resistance. During a recession, you have a captive audience with your employees. You say if you don't like it, you can, find a job elsewhere. That was the management tone when we were in our recession, and I know Europe is coming out of its recession. But now people have choices, and so you have to include them. You just can't demand that they change. So some of not understanding the process is a number of different factors. Even a perfect process is subject to what I call rust or entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, not really understanding the process. And we talked about this, that not one person really understands it. But real exceptions occur and are to the official process. And quite often processes are what I would call the great of the company. So I don't know if you've ever looked inside of plumbing. Most people don't like to, but inside of most plumbing, there's a trap. And in that trap, there's a screen, and all the junk collects there. And that's kind of how processes can be with exceptions. And in those exceptions is where you're going to find some of those opportunistic and threat patterns. Also, adding flexibility for customer needs. This is going to be a big thing going forward. We're going to see processes adapt around behavior. So the notion of not just being able to understand what the customer wants in this transaction, but the whole series of transactions. And not only that, you need to get into their head. So the one example that I've run into is this one hotel chain. When you come in, they read your situation if they don't know it already. So if you come in with a baby, that seems to be a bit cranky, by the time you get to the room, they've got pacifiers, they've got, cookies for the little, maybe animal crackers, and so they're able to adapt their check-in process and your accommodations based on what you need. So if you've ever had a cranky kid on a trip, you know what I mean. I've had that since I have 7 children. So the other thing is bypass solutions cobbled to respond to change. So quite often people will create shadow processes behind to respond to change. And adding surrounding actions for new context. There are a number of reasons why you want the core process to be represented in a model and all the variation. So there are a lot of reasons why processes can get out of date, and if they're in the cloud, you can change it very quickly. So business process modeling is benefiting from the cloud, and it's going from the few to the masses, and Gartner calls it BPA for the masses. So clients voted that you know, the 2 most important features to be is to be modeling in the cloud. So it gets a very high score, and human interactions gets a very high score. Unstructured and processes gets a high score. So this is adapted from Gartner. They did a study, and you can see the nums here. People want to do this in the cloud. Now, why do you want to do it in the cloud? Well, there are a lot of benefits here. Time to market, because you can start up very quickly. You buy a couple of seats, rent a couple of seats, and all of a sudden you're up and running. It has flexible scaling. If you want to start off in your small company and you want to start off with 1 to 2 people, and then all of a sudden you grow, there's an example of a company called Jabil, which has become, it started off with James and Bill, 2 people. Now it's a multi-billion-dollar company making specialty boards that get put in all kinds of different contexts, actual devices, computers, everywhere. So they were able to scale up and get more and more people involved. Mobile modeling anywhere. You can respond to a model change or give your input or annotate what you think should be on that model. You can leverage the wisdom of the crowd, so you can let other people take a look at a proposed model. So let's say you're coming in with a new customer service model that doesn't make you pick what department you want to work with, and if you have a set of transactions that you don't have to get changed to another department and moved around. I'm sure you've all had that experience. I just had it this week twice. The other thing is, you're taking the process knowledge and you're giving it to everybody. It used to be you would hold back, the secrets of doing your job and doing your process. We can't do that anymore because there's just too much work to do and there's so much change to deal with that you have to come up with a democracy, in terms of sharing process information. Also, there's the advantage of having the cloud as a central sharing device. You don't have to manage all that, hardware, software, etc. And it's location neutral, and it could have multiple physical locations you don't even know. It's time neutral. You can work with multiple time zones. When I was at American Express, we had all kinds of problems with that. Global compliance with engaged people. People want to be involved. This gets them very excited about the process. It reduces analysis paralysis, which to me is the worst problem in modeling. And social collaboration is enabled. The benefits are deep and rich. Well, why should I do it? I mean, maybe we should have started off this question, but what are the benefits that come from model-driven approaches? The cost of gathering process data savings range to 20 to 30% over non-cloud approaches. I think that's conservative. If you have to gather everybody in a war room and get all those people around, and when somebody else is pontificating, you don't have to listen to it. They just put down in the cloud what they want in the process, and then you get to resolve the exception. So there's reduced time to results. There's reduced response time for customers, and the overall cost reduction is 15 to 30%, starting with any kind of process. And again, I've seen numbers that eclipse that, but you know, we can't go around promising mega numbers, but I've seen them. So what are the intangibles? You know, it's not just, you know, the dollars and the time. It's, you know, customer satisfaction scores. It gives coaching material for the people that are involved with the end-to-end process so that they can do a better job. When you see how other people are doing work and you're doing work in a different way, during the modeling process, you can work that out and you can learn different patterns of success. And that leads to identifying emerging better practices. And the ability to communicate what target everybody's shooting for is, you know, very important. You've got to get people on the same page, and a model does that. So what are the kinds of typical deliverables that you're going to get out of model-driven? Well, you're going to get a process model. It's great. You get a visual with happy paths, viable alternative happy paths, exception paths for analysis. In some cases, you can link this to systems and create a dashboard and match the model to the dashboard. That's something that ARIS has done for quite a long time, and we're basically the first to do that. You can find targets and variances. You can generate operations manuals. You can generate policy and constraint specifications, even for coders. Well, you say, well, this sounds so good. What does it take to get started? This is where the cloud kicks in. If you have some process modeling and analysis skills, it's very helpful. But we've seen business professionals step up to the plate and design their own processes and get the initial benefit in weeks. We've also seen the use of cloud technology and social collaboration over time to, you know, deliver significant benefit. So it's quick, it's easy. Kind of like that. Kind of like being in a sports car on a racetrack, you know, it's easier to drive one of those than a standard car. So, you know, what should you do? What's your action plan for intelligent business operations and model-driven? Start modeling your key processes and stop missing out on savings and stop missing out on revenue and better practice creep. Build capital for further effort. So if you're successful, you can jumpstart other efforts. And really sharp companies, really smart ones, are doing that. Obviously, the accountants want a little bit of that, but you can use it for some of it for funding the next. The next 90 days, expand from simple processes to glean more benefit and capital for the next step. And in 12 months, start nailing those end-to-end processes. Now, if you're a risk taker like I am, I would start with the end-to-end process. And I've worked in some very risky situations, and with end-to-end processes, it takes a little bit longer to get the result, but the result is good. So you can read more about process and process intelligence in the next wave of BPM, which is social, mobile, cloud, big data, analytics, intelligent, and in the cloud. And things are going to get more complex with this change. And I've written a book on that with a couple other authors, and if you're interested, you know, it's available online. So at this point in time, I'd like to turn the podium back to Yuri.
Thank you, Jim. On the next slide, I would, well, go a bit more into the tool perspective. First of all, very great, insightful presentation. I liked it a lot. You showed us in a great way how process improvement or business process analysis as a service can add a lot of value. And I'd like to introduce now ProcessLive, which is the business process analysis as a service tool from Software AG. ProcessLive was launched nearly a year ago, October last year in San Francisco. We had quite a nice launch event. And since then, over 1,500 project rooms were created in ProcessLive, in the cloud. We got data centers in the US, one in Europe and one in Australia. We use Amazon Web Services as our cloud infrastructure provider. Our largest customer in Australia is working now with over 160 people in the cloud to improve their processes with ProcessLive. So we had quite a big success with the product. And the reason for that success were actually the reasons we were talking about already. Customers have a very fast time to value. So if you want to start with process improvement, it takes you really a minute or two, and you are ready to start, ready to design your first processes, ready to invite colleagues to get improvement, to start collaboration, ready to share process models, to get agreement on improved processes, and to establish process improvement as a management discipline. So fast time to value. Another reason is that ProcessLive is scaling based on your demand. So often projects start with a few process designers who build, let me say, basic processes. Processes which can be used as the base to collaborate, to build better processes, to improve them. So in the next phase of a project, more people would be added up to the system that they could collaborate. Then once you got as-is processes, you probably scale down on the designer side, but you add more viewers, more people who can actually consume the models so that you can share process knowledge in your organization, or as Jim said, bring processes to the masses and to lift process thinking to a new level. And also, as Jim said, engaging people, asking them for their opinion is helping big time when it comes to change management. So if people were involved in the change management process, they are way more willing to change the way they work. This is a very important thing to keep in mind, because often here process improvement projects fail. Another trend I'm seeing, or what our customers are doing with ProcessLive, is to use BPA in the cloud to turn their organization into a customer-centric company. So first of all, they are starting to identify customer touchpoints. So which touchpoints is my organization having? Which touchpoints can customers use to get in touch with our organizations, to raise a complaint or to get some information? So once you categorize those touchpoints, you can start to design processes following up on those engagements, on those interactions. And those processes should be optimized end-to-end. And there should be core processes, because you interact with customers. And once they are obviously core processes, they should have owners. They should have service levels. So if you have reached that level of maturity, very good. If not, it would be definitely a good idea to think about it. And if you think it's hard to do that, to start with such an exercise, well, it's not. As I said, it takes 2 minutes. You go to ProcessLive.com and you can start your first project. And if you need to know how to do that, you can send me an email. You get my email address in a follow-up email, because I wrote a paper on how to transform an organization into a customer-centric company. Another thing in that context are also customer journey maps. ProcessLive is built on ARIS technology, which basically kicked off the BPA market 20 years ago. We brought our technology in the cloud. We have all the great values of a cloud go-to-market, and we added another great capability to it, which is social collaboration, something which you might know from Facebook already. So you can follow a process. So if somebody is commenting on a process, asking for a change, making a suggestion, you would get a push notification. You make process management more fun. You make it more interactive. You engage people. With that, you are also able to take BPA out of that expert process management discipline and make it available to the masses, which will lift off your project big time and which will also help you to get benefits faster because you get more people to collaborate, and you get change easier done because people are engaged. Obviously, ProcessLive also comes with a subscription model. So you can subscribe to ProcessLive on a quarterly basis. You can subscribe a certain number of designers, certain number of viewers. And when you need less designers or viewers, you can scale down or up as you want. As I said, if you want to try ProcessLive and prove if the things Jim and I said are true, please go to ProcessLive.com. Here you get a nice overview on the capabilities of the product. There's a tutorial section where you get videos where you learn how to use the product, how to set up a project, how to design a process, how to start a collaboration, and so forth. And most importantly, there is a shop tab where you find a free trial. And this free trial is quite a good offering because you get a free ProcessLive project room in the cloud. You can choose your location, so you could choose, well, I want a project room in the US, I want a project room in Europe that will be hosted in Ireland, or in Australia. Here we are having the data center in Sydney. And you get 2 process designers, so 2 people who can really design processes or create content, and 5 people who can consume content, who can collaborate. And you can test the product. If you got questions, we have quite a big community with over 300,000 members now. So we have a very active community support, but also you will get my email. You can send me an email as well. And with that, Jenny, I'd like to hand over back to you.
Thank you, Jörg. We can now go further to the Q&A session. And so everyone, if you would like to ask a question, please type in your questions to the Q&A panel of your WebEx console and send it to all panelists, and we will answer it. Just wait a few seconds. And Jörg, there is one already.
Yeah. So, first question. Why focusing on consensus in BPA? Aren't process experts good enough? No, Jim, I'd like to hand that over to you, if you don't mind.
Well, I think if you're a process expert, you probably think you are, and that you have these great analytical skills, and you're able to reach in and certainly do a good job since you understand processes and the issue. The problem is, let's say the process expert is perfect, and there may be some of those out there. I'm not one of those, but when you try to actually get the change going, you're going to need those people to help you with the change. And frankly, they're going to have some really good ideas that you're going to miss, that you're not going to get as a process expert. So, to me, it helps to have a process expert around, but you get more out of a team than you do individuals. Now, if you're playing soccer and you have the world record goal kicker on your I should say football, sorry, on your team, then you can take the World Cup sometimes, but it's important to get everybody involved to accept that change.
Yeah. And I think this was a long time a very hard thing for process excellence, or centers of process excellence, as they were called often, because they were using special tools, they were using a special knowledge, they were using notations to describe processes which not everybody understood. And with breaking that up, with bringing process knowledge to the people, with maybe more natural language, will help a lot to increase awareness and acceptance. And will lift process thinking to a level, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, you can use the analogy, you know, it used to be people used to read to other people, and then we came up with education where we taught everybody to read. And, you know,
very good.
Look what's happened now. Our whole world has exploded with knowledge, and that's what will happen here.
Yeah. Florence Lowe, I'm sorry, I might confuse you. So if you want to ask me a question, feel free to use the Q&A panel. If you want to ask me a question after the webinar regarding the usage of the product, you can send me an email. Second question. Aren't processes the competitive advantage of a company? Why putting them in the cloud?
Oh yeah, here's the security bugaboo question. And you know, there are a lot of movies out that are saying, you know, you've got issues with, you know, things being shared. You know, there's a popular movie in America about that, and you know, it's not, you know, the kind of thing that you get in the cloud. In the cloud, you get extra security. And, you know, there are ways of identifying the different processes that you have and maybe segregating them. So, you know, you have control over what you want in the cloud. It's highly secure, and, you know, there are ways of managing it. You may have some thoughts on this yourself because you have a number of clients that have done this.
Yeah. So we kind of knew that this question would come because security would always pop up. Two answers from my side. The first answer, we are working, as I mentioned already, with Amazon Web Services, the global leader in cloud infrastructure. And AWS is having thousands of engineers doing nothing else than making sure that data is secure. Really pure focus on security, regulations, compliance, and those topics. When I speak to customers, especially smaller organizations, I obviously get the perception that their data center might not have such a great security support. And to bring it to an extreme, I've seen some very small companies where the intern is taking care of the latest security concepts. Yeah, so I think it's always a good idea to kind of judge what's my level of security in my data center and what level of security can an organization like AWS provide. And also when it comes to data storage, AWS will not move your data. So if you create your project room in Ireland, your data will stay there. The same in Australia, the same in the US. Yeah? So it's not that this data will be moved to another country with another data security law. So that will not happen. On top of that, what I think is really important to think about, and you might remember that one slide Jim showed with the plane, with the little pilot cockpit guy. It's important to have a strategy. Especially when it comes to make a decision, what technology do I want to consume in the cloud, and what technology should be on-premise because it's highly critical. And when it comes to BPA, easy things can be done. So you could say, well, my core processes are my key intellectual property. I will not put that in the cloud. Okay, fair enough. Then you put that on-premise. But then you can manage your context processes like HR or finance in the cloud, right? So you could run a hybrid strategy, which means that you know your core and your context processes first. If you can't answer that question today, what's the core, what the context process of my organization, or what are my top 10 core processes, or what are my top 10 customer touch points, or what are my customer journey maps, then you should probably start with a BPA initiative. Because if you don't have that knowledge, you will also probably fail with your cloud strategy. Yeah? So it's important to know what is the DNA of your business, what makes you unique, and then to make a decision, is it a private cloud, is it public cloud, is it on-premise? Most of our customers are running a hybrid strategy, which works as well. Yeah? So we have customers using ARIS on-premise, And if they're on board a subsidiary in another country, then they will start new projects in the cloud and bring the content together. Yeah, but as I said, strategy is really key here. It's really important to understand what do we want to do, what do we want to achieve, until when, with whom. Yeah, it's very key. And that was a very long answer, I guess, to that question. And to make it even longer, I believe that BPA was actually born for a cloud deployment model, because BPA always starts with projects, maybe on a departmental level. And BPA has different maturity levels with different demands on users and user types. And BPA may grow to an end-to-end enterprise-wide program with a global reach. Yeah? But the small and start fast, and that growth path to an end-to-end global process improvement program is perfectly supported by the cloud. And it can't be more agile, and it can't be more valuable than with the cloud path. So I personally believe that even with security concerns, BPA in the cloud is, well, clearly the way to go. No question. So, two more questions. One is, are there case studies of implementing ProcessLive in practice? Did they get a better adoption of or by business users? Yes, there are 2 case studies I'm working on, and they should have been done. They should have been published already. However, as you might know, working on case studies always takes some time. I already mentioned the one big customer in Australia, over 160 people. But there's another case study which we will launch hopefully at Innovation World in October. Northern Gas from the UK will speak about their success story with BPA in the cloud. So Northern Gas is capturing gas processes. They collaboratively improve to be develop to be processes, and that will be presented at Innovation World in the presentation. That's where we also launched the case study. I'm very happy to forward that to you by then. Another case study is on our website, ProcessLive.com. That's the video with Litmus Group from Singapore. Also for them, ProcessLive is perfect because it's a consultancy company, and if they get a project on the customer side, they just open a project room in ProcessLive, run the project. When the project is paused, they just stop the project room, reactivate it after a while, or if the project is over, they just download the content and keep it on premise and can reuse it later. All right. So this. Okay, another question, and I suggest it's the last one because we are running out of time. Can a customer make any modifications, macros, reports within their project room in ProcessLive? Well, in a public cloud offering, it's always a bit difficult with customizing. So if you see ProcessLive today, it comes with a set of reports which you can run on your content. Here's a little teaser, or a little spoiler, I should rather say. We'll launch a new version of ProcessLive at Innovation World, where we also give power to our users to create their own reports. So that will be launched at Innovation World in October in New Orleans. Stay tuned. Obviously, there will be another webcast where we speak a bit more in detail about these products in November.
Thank you very much, Jörg, and thank you, Jim. I would like to take the opportunity to inform our audience about our next week's webinar as well. It's about ARIS GRC. We will run this session on September 23rd, and it would be great if one or the other attendee would join as well next week. As I said, we will send you the link to the recorded version of this webinar and PDF of presentations also via email, and the one or other question that we cannot answer now because we are running out of time will be also answered via email directly. With that said, I hope to see you soon and have a nice day, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.